Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have it all? I'm talking about immense wealth, unparalleled wisdom, and power that stretches as far as the eye can see. Today, we're diving into the legendary story of a king who had exactly that. King Solomon. His reign is one of the most fascinating tales in history, a story of incredible highs and cautionary lows. So, who was Solomon? He was the son of King David, the giant slayer, and Bathsheba. His path to the throne wasn't exactly straightforward. There was a bit of palace intrigue with his older brother Adonijah, trying to grab the crown. But with the help of his mother and the prophet Nathan, David declared Solomon his successor. And just like that, a young man found himself ruling one of the most powerful kingdoms of the ancient world. Early in his reign, Solomon had a profound experience. God appeared to him in a dream and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Now, what would you ask for? Riches, long life, the defeat of your enemies. Solomon, in a move that would define his legacy, asked for something different. He asked for wisdom, a discerning heart to govern God's people and to distinguish between right and wrong. This humble request pleased God so much that he not only granted Solomon wisdom beyond any person before or after him, but he also threw in the things Solomon didn't ask for: riches and honor. This legendary wisdom wasn't just for show. It was put to the test almost immediately in one of the most famous legal cases in history. You've probably heard it. The story of the two women and the baby. Both women claimed to be the mother of a living infant. The other baby had died in the night, with no witnesses and no DNA tests. How could anyone possibly know the truth? Solomon's solution was both shocking and genius. He called for a sword and ordered the baby to be cut in two, with half given to each woman. The real mother, horrified, cried out, "Please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him." The other woman, however, said, "Neither I nor you shall have him." Cut him in two in that moment. Solomon saw the truth. He pointed to the first woman and declared her the true mother. News of this judgment spread like wildfire, and the people of Israel stood in awe of their king, realizing he possessed divine wisdom. With this wisdom, Solomon ushered in a golden age for Israel. His reign was marked by peace and unprecedented prosperity. The kingdom's borders expanded, and its influence grew. Solomon was a master of diplomacy and trade. He built a formidable army, not for conquest, but for defense, securing his kingdom's trade routes. He forged alliances with neighboring kings, like Hiram of Tyre, and even married the pharaoh's daughter, a major political power move at the time. His trade network was vast, stretching across land and sea. Ships brought back gold from Ophir, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. The Bible says that during Solomon's reign, silver was as common in Jerusalem as stones. He wasn't just a political and economic powerhouse. He was also a great builder. And his most magnificent building project, the one that became the heart of the nation, was the first temple in Jerusalem. For 7 years, the finest materials and craftsmen were dedicated to its construction. Cedar from Lebanon, gold from distant lands, and massive, expertly cut stones were all used to create a breathtaking home for the Ark of the Covenant. When it was finally dedicated, it was a national event of immense celebration and religious significance. The temple stood as a symbol of God's presence among his people and Solomon's devotion. But the temple wasn't his only project. He also built a lavish palace for himself that took 13 years to complete, along with other administrative buildings, store cities, and fortifications throughout his kingdom. Jerusalem was transformed into a capital city worthy of its global reputation. Solomon's wisdom wasn't just for judging court cases. He was a poet, a naturalist, and a philosopher. He is credited with writing over 3,000 Proverbs and 1,005 songs. The biblical books of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon are traditionally attributed to him. People came from all over the known world just to hear his wisdom. The most famous of these visitors was the Queen of Sheba. Hearing of Solomon's fame, she traveled from her distant kingdom, likely in modern-day Ethiopia or Yemen, with a great caravan of spices, gold, and precious stones. She came to test him with hard questions, and Solomon answered them all. Nothing was too difficult for him to explain. The queen was completely overwhelmed. She said, The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true, but I did not believe it until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard. This was the peak of Solomon's reign, a time of peace, prosperity, and spiritual height. But as the saying goes, what goes up must come down. The latter part of Solomon's story is a tragic turn. The very thing that helped build his empire's diplomatic marriages also planted the seeds of its downfall. Solomon had 700 wives, who were princesses from other nations, and 300 concubines. These foreign wives were allowed to continue worshipping their own gods, and Solomon, in his later years, began to drift. He built high places, or shrines, for their gods right near Jerusalem. His heart, which was once so fully devoted, was turned away. The Bible presents this as a direct violation of his covenant. The same God who had appeared to him twice and granted him everything now warned him of the consequences. Because he had turned away, the kingdom would be torn from his son's hand. However, for the sake of his father, David, this wouldn't happen in Solomon's lifetime, and one tribe, Judah, would remain. The golden age began to tarnish. Troubles started brewing on the borders. Adversaries that had been quiet for years suddenly rose up. Internally, the heavy taxation and forced labor required for his massive building projects had created resentment among the people, especially the northern tribes. The unity of the kingdom was fracturing under the strain. Solomon died after a 40-year reign. He had started with so much promise, guided by divine wisdom, and had built a kingdom that was the envy of the world. But he ended his life having strayed from the very foundation of his success. His story is often seen as a profound lesson, captured in the book of Ecclesiastes, which is believed to have been written by him in his old age. It's a reflection on a life lived to the fullest, exploring pleasure, wealth, and knowledge, only to conclude that everything is meaningless, a chasing after the wind, without a proper relationship with God. After his death, his son, Rehoboam, took the throne. When the people asked for a lighter burden, Rehoboam arrogantly refused, promising to be even harsher than his father. This was the final straw. The 10 northern tribes rebelled and formed their own kingdom, the Kingdom of Israel. The unified monarchy that David and Solomon had built was shattered, never to be fully restored. So, the legacy of King Solomon is complex. He is remembered as the wisest man who ever lived, the builder of the sacred temple, the king who presided over Israel's most glorious era. But he is also a cautionary tale, a story of how even the wisest and most blessed can fall, how power and success can corrupt, and how turning away from your core principles can lead to ruin. It's a timeless human story about the struggle between wisdom and temptation, devotion and distraction, a story that continues to fascinate and teach us thousands of years later. Have you ever faced a decision so tough it felt impossible? A choice where no matter what you did, someone would get hurt. Imagine being a kind where your decisions could change the course of a nation. Today, we're diving into the life of a man whose name is synonymous with wisdom itself. King Solomon. We'll explore the legendary tales of his sharp mind, the monumental choices he made, and how his legacy continues to echo through thousands of years. From a golden age of peace and prosperity to a kingdom on the brink of collapse, Solomon's story is a gripping tale of power, wisdom, and human valor. One of his first recorded acts reveals the core of his character. In a dream, God appeared to Solomon and offered him anything he desired: riches, long life. The defeat of his enemies. Solomon asked for none of these. Instead, he asked for a discerning heart, what we would call wisdom, to govern his people and to distinguish between right and wrong. This humble and selfless request pleased God so much that he granted Solomon not only unparalleled wisdom, but also the riches and honor he hadn't asked for. This moment sets the stage for everything to come. It wasn't just about being smart. It was about a deep desire for justice and righteous leadership, and that wisdom was put to the test almost immediately. The most famous story, of course, is the judgment of the 2 women and the baby. 2 women came before him, both claiming to be the mother of a single infant. One woman's baby had died in the night, and she had allegedly swapped the living child for the dead one. With no witnesses and no evidence, how could anyone possibly know the truth? This is where Solomon's divine wisdom shines. He called for a sword and declared, "Cut the living child in two and give half to one and half to the other." The reaction was instant and revealing. The real mother, in her agony, cried out, "Please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him." The other woman, however, coldly agreed, "Neither I nor you shall have him. Cut him." In that moment, Solomon saw the truth. He pointed to the woman who would rather give up her child than see him harmed and declared her the true mother. This story spread like wildfire, cementing Solomon's reputation as a king of incredible insight and justice. It wasn't just a clever trick. It was a profound understanding of human nature and a mother's love. With his reputation for wisdom established, Solomon ushered in a golden age for Israel. His reign was marked by peace and unprecedented prosperity. The Bible describes it as a time when Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They ate, they drank, and they were happy. Solomon wasn't a warrior king like his father, David. He was a diplomat, a builder, and a statesman. He forged strategic alliances with neighboring kingdoms, often sealed by marriage, like his famous marriage to the pharaoh's daughter. He established powerful trade routes, bringing in gold, silver, ivory, exotic animals, and precious woods from distant lands like Ophir and Tarshish. The kingdom's wealth became legendary. The crown jewel of his reign, literally and figuratively, was the construction of the first temple in Jerusalem. This was a project his father, David, had dreamed of, but was not permitted to build. Solomon took on this monumental task with incredible dedication. For 7 years, the finest materials and the most skilled craftsmen were employed to build a magnificent house for God. It was overlaid with pure gold, adorned with intricate carvings, and housed the Ark of the Covenant. The dedication of the temple was a national event, a high point in Israel's history. It became the central focus of religious life, a symbol of God's presence among his people and a testament to the nation's devotion and wealth. Beyond the temple, Solomon was a prolific builder. He fortified Jerusalem, constructed a lavish royal palace that took 13 years to complete, and built up strategic cities throughout his kingdom. His projects were ambitious, transforming the landscape and economy of Israel. But this massive building campaign came at a cost. It required immense resources and, more importantly, immense manpower. Solomon's wisdom wasn't just for judging legal cases. It was also expressed through literature. He is traditionally credited with writing or compiling much of the Bible's wisdom literature. The Book of Proverbs, a collection of wise sayings and instructions for living a righteous life, is largely attributed to him. He's also associated with the Book of Ecclesiastes, a profound and sometimes cynical philosophical reflection on the meaning of life, famous for its line, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." And then there's the Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon, a beautiful and passionate love poem. Through these works, Solomon's influence extended from the courtroom to the classroom, shaping the moral and intellectual fabric of his people for generations. His court became a center of learning, attracting sages and scholars. The famous story of the Queen of Sheba, who traveled a great distance just to test his wisdom with hard questions, shows how far his fame had spread. She left in awe, declaring that the half had not been told to her. But here's where the story takes a tragic turn. The seeds of the kingdom's downfall were sown at the height of its glory. Remember those diplomatic marriages? Solomon amassed a huge harem, including many foreign women from nations that worshipped other gods. The Bible says he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. As he grew older, his foreign wives turned his heart away from God. To please them, he built high places and altars for their gods, like Ashtoreth and Molech, right near Jerusalem. The very king who had built the magnificent temple to the one true God was now endorsing and participating in idol worship. This was a direct violation of God's covenant. The wisdom that had been his greatest gift began to fail him as his devotion faltered. The consequences were severe. God declared that because of his unfaithfulness, the kingdom would be torn from his son's hand. Only one tribe, Judah, would remain, for the sake of his father David. and for the city of Jerusalem. The financial strain of his massive building projects also took its toll. To fund his ambitions and maintain his lavish lifestyle, Solomon imposed heavy taxes and, most controversially, used forced labor. He conscripted tens of thousands of his own people to work on his projects. This created deep resentment, especially among the northern tribes who felt they were bearing an unfair burden. The unity of the nation, so strong at the beginning of his reign, began to crack under the pressure. A man named Jeroboam, one of Solomon's own officials, rose up in rebellion, and though it was quelled, it was a dark omen of the division to come. When Solomon died after a 40-year reign, he left behind a kingdom that was outwardly magnificent, but inwardly fractured. His son, Rehoboam, inherited the throne, but not his father's early wisdom. When the people came to him and asked him to lighten the heavy burden of labor and taxes, Rehoboam foolishly rejected the advice of the elders and threatened to make their burden even heavier. That was the final straw. The 10 northern tribes revolted and formed their own kingdom under Jeroboam. The glorious united monarchy built by David and Solomon was shattered, never to be fully restored. So, what is Solomon's lasting impact? It's a complex and dual legacy. On one hand, he represents the pinnacle of wisdom, justice, and prosperity. The story of his judgment, the glory of the temple, and the timeless wisdom in Proverbs continue to inspire people worldwide. He set a standard for what a wise and just ruler could be. On the other hand, his story is a powerful cautionary tale. It shows that even the wisest person can fall. It's a story about how unchecked power, wealth, and personal compromises can lead to spiritual decay and national disaster. His failure to remain faithful to God and his harsh treatment of his people ultimately undid the very kingdom he had built. Solomon's life forces us to ask deep questions. What is true wisdom? Is it just about being clever, or is it rooted in humility and faithfulness? How do we balance ambition with integrity? Solomon's journey from a humble young king asking for a discerning heart to an old man building altars to foreign gods is one of the most profound and tragic character arcs in history. His legacy is not just in the golden artifacts or the ruins of his buildings, but in the enduring lessons about the human condition, our capacity for greatness, and our vulnerability to failure. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the life of King Solomon. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into history. Let me know in the comments what you think is Solomon's most important lesson for us today. See you next time.